Jason, thank you for joining us. You today presented the keynote speech of Localization World here in San Jose, and you made a very enlightening presentation about the status and the history of AI in the world, not necessarily specific to the language industry. I want to ask you something. I've been having conversations with experts, and I have a sense that we're constantly talking about what generative AI is, how to use it, where to use it, when to use it, but we're never talking about who is going to make it work. So what is the role of the human in this whole revolution?
Yeah, no, I think that's the key question, right? What this tool is, and it is a tool, right? The generative AI is something that needs to have oversight and needs to be tooled to do exactly what we need it to do. And so you're going to have the tooler that's going to oversee it, and an expert, a field and domain expert, that's going to have to evaluate its performance and control it. And so at the end of the day, what I believe is happening is the set of skills that we train for the art that we do, the work that we do, has to evolve to also be, well, how do we also work with these new kind of partners or these new kind of almost employees that can help us do our work faster, right? So we have to serve in this kind of tech lead type role where you're overseeing the execution of various tasks, and then you're supporting your tooling or your partners in this case to help you execute it. So I think we're going to have more productivity. We're going to be able to do more because we have these entities to help us. But the role of that leader is indispensable, right? And so we won't spend 80% of our time necessarily editing and hands-on keyboard and tweaking, but there's that 20% that we're going to use to make judgments and decisions and develop strategies that we're going to be able to focus on, and then that 80% of the time goes away, and then we'll be able to scale the amount of projects, the amount of work, the scale of the strategy we're executing, because we have that help. So it makes us more productive. And that the negative of that is that it can affect the supply-demand dynamic, right? Because all of a sudden now, if each person can do 3 times, 4 times as much work, because they're leveraging the tools, that means, and work stays fixed, that means you have less resources. I mean, you have less potential opportunities per worker. And so that's something we have to grapple with. But it's not a case that we can be replaced. I don't think in the near term that's going to be even a challenge.
I agree with you in the sense that replacement is not a threat, right? But one of the things that you, in your presentation, you mentioned the increase in productivity, but not an accompanying increase in pay, in compensation for people doing the work. So we talk a lot about increased productivity, improvement, and we're talking a lot about the digital materials and human tasks that require process and so on. But how can we, and this has an element of social injustice even, because who are the people that get screwed in this story? It's basically the people who are doing simple jobs. The capitalist, the entrepreneur, the tech company, they are taking advantage of all this productivity increase, and it's not being shared with the communities and so on. Is there a way that we can use this technology, and this is a little bit of a change, that we can use these advancements in this technology to improve the lives of people? Do we need to change the economic model because of that?
Yeah, well, honestly, I think we should do both. I think we do have to change the economic model. That's the harder thing to envision. But it's quite simple, right? It's simple in that as soon as you provide a tool such as this to a community of people, the required level of skill goes down because the tool can do a lot of the hard work, right? I'll give a concrete example. Perhaps very soon we're going to have to re-understand what it means to have a Pulitzer Prize, right? So excellence in writing. Like, what does that mean when now folks that would be at the bottom of the distribution in the quality of writing can all have a baseline of excellence that's competitive with a Pulitzer Prize winner? Everyone can do it, right? So the hypothesis that there's going to be an impact on wages for certain disciplines comes from that now even programming, right? So a place I specialize, I'm seeing what these models can do. It can make a crappy coder produce very good code, right? And so what's the value of a good coder now, right? And so I think that might lead to a depression in the wages in the supply-demand dynamic. But so I do think fundamentally the economic model will have to change, though I think value gets redefined ultimately. Value just will shift. And in that shift, some people will be affected negatively, others may be affected positively. What I think we should focus on is teaching critical thinking, judgment, evaluative reasoning, so that we can see, we need to be able to discern what's quality versus not quality, what's good versus bad. This is a general skill that will become, I believe, the key differentiator across talent that our society is going to recognize given this trend. But, things like surgery were good for a couple decades. Some of these physical tasks that you talk about, right? Like, we're going to need folks to actually fix our broken plumbing. Like, that's not going to be helped at all. And maybe the value of that will proportionately go up relative to someone, say, copy editing the final draft of a blog article. That might be affected, but it'll raise the plumbers. So it's going to be, we'll see how it shakes out, right? We'll see who the winners and losers, are. It's not clear that, I think the losers in this case might be the skilled folks that typically get paid a lot of money. We'll see. Yeah.
So these are very good points. And I think that one of the amazing, what you're describing is that it's an equalizer in a certain way, because those guys who had a lot of advantage over the years were recognized for technology work and so on. There's a level playing field, and then there's an opportunity for other tasks like doctors and pharmacists and technologists in other areas, so chemists and physicists and so on. So it's a very interesting dynamic coming forward. Another aspect that I think we overlook when having this conversation about AI, and I have a tendency to observe that people like to describe it with graphs that are two-dimensional. And we tend to look at a linear future where it only affects a certain aspect of activities and not the complexity of how every human interaction and every human activity interacts to create a more 4D, 5D environment. And maybe, I tend to be an optimist. I think that as other technologies have done in the past, LLMs and generative AI are going to create opportunities for new environments to be created and new jobs to be created. I read recently that in the past, telephone exchanges used to be operators, women. It was an entry job for women. And when the automatic exchanges came around, these women didn't have a job. And when they looked years later and they looked back, women were taking better jobs than the operator job, which was a very entry-level, very manual, very basic, and they were taking jobs as assistants, as even construction and airplane construction programmers and so on. The first women, black women, right? Yeah. So how do you put this generative AI in this more, less linear and more complex environment.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think it's really important to observe that this is so new, right? Like one of the things I emphasize in my talk is it hasn't been a year yet since we've really started thinking about this as a market, right? Like thinking about generative AI and how it affects the way we work and the way we play and the way we operate our businesses. So it's very, very new, and a lot of the ways that it'll affect our the milieu of our work and our lives is yet to be determined. There's a few things that's clear. It's clear that tasks that involves the creation of natural language and even coded language are going to be disrupted by this tech. But I do think that there's some ways that no one's thinking about or talking about that's going to be relevant. In particular, having these models act on our behalf, right? It turns out that the same technology that makes it good at generating what to say next in a sequence is the same kind of foundational tech that can determine what to do next in a sequence of things to do. It's the same fundamental type of activity. And there's some research looking into getting models to do things for us. And so I think that category of do is going to be an area of disruption that we're not really necessarily contemplating right now. What if the model decides when to write an email for me? What if the model decides when to talk to one of my teammates on Slack in my stead? What if it decides when to change my code base based on its observations? Like, these models engaging in that capacity, I believe, is inevitable, because I believe that humans are fundamentally lazy. We're more lazy than we are scared. If the model can do stuff for us and we can be in bed, we'll take the risk. So I think it's coming. And so I think that these are some of the transformative ways that we're going to be experiencing this journey. So that's one category. The vision space is also latent. These models can recognize things using the same transformer neural network stuff that I talked about. Multimodal models, which means models that do multiple of these things. It can listen to you speak, it can see and recognize things, and then it can act on your behalf. Those are three categories of sensing and actuating that a single model can do. I think that that's coming. So we have an interesting world to navigate. I do think we have a little bit of time because we're still digesting the last disruption, and the scientists are going to keep working on the future stuff. But it's a very interesting time, and I honestly think, like I said in the talk, this one's a big one. This one's not like the automobile. It's not like one thing that is easy now. It's not like the farming industry, like machinery. It's like, okay, now we can pick corn very efficiently. Just for corn, very efficient. We can drive, we could get from here to there efficient. This is a creation that makes thinking and producing arbitrary things more efficient. So it's going to be disruptive over the span of 3 years. Look what has happened in less than a year, and tell me what will happen in 3 years. Impossible.
We're in violent agreement.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I like to say is that we're at ChatGPT 4, which is the second iteration of the public ChatGPT. I want to see what ChatGPT 9 or 13 is going to be doing, right? And this element of the vision environment, I believe that what we're going to need is a new form factor. I believe that Vision Pro is going to be a first step in that direction, because it's a disruptive way of displaying. It's not the metaverse or something like that. I've been feeling this since 5G came into the scene. Now, combining it with generative AI, you can create a new world, essentially. But one of the elements, and just for us to conclude our conversation, which is the element of social justice, right? We are here at a conference where we deal with languages, and generative AI, large language models, are essentially fed in mostly English and I would say something like 70% is English. You get to the next 10 languages, you reach 90% of all the LLMs, and then you have 10% left for thousands of languages. And this kind of sets back the African continent, the Indian subcontinent, people who don't speak the mainstream languages. What can we, as leaders in this space, influence the creation of models for inclusivity?
And this is a major problem, and it really is it's an offshoot of capitalism. I mean, if you look at those market cap companies that list, most of them are, there might be 3 or so that are not Western, American, or English-speaking otherwise countries. I think it's a side effect of that. But it's our responsibility as a community and a society and a species to be thoughtful about how we operate. Like, in a way, we've actually proven that capitalism is something that needs to be regulated itself, because that's what we do. That's why we have taxes, right? Like, that's why we have programs. And this is one of those vectors where we have to be thoughtful to do what's helpful to the world in an inclusive way, especially when it comes to something that's fundamental as the languages we speak, and being able to partake in this technology despite whichever language. The tech itself is mostly capable, is fully capable. So it's going to fall upon, it's going to fall upon the folks who care about humanity, which are should be each of us. We should all be conscientious to contribute to the development of a fully accessible to the world AI technology. And I also think the policymakers themselves should contribute. All the folks that care about the whole world should be setting aside resources to make sure that these models are fluent in every language. And so we have to be thoughtful. It's not going to make business sense ever, but it makes human sense. And so that needs to be enough. And when it stops being enough, the AI has won. The machines have won. We're losing.
Jason, thank you so much. This was a great conversation, very insightful. And welcome anytime. You're welcome back here to talk to us. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to meet you.